In the 2000s, car companies were in a frenzy. The new millennium promised innovation, bold design, and market domination. But somewhere between ambition and execution, a few automakers missed the mark badly. So let's take a ride through the automotive disasters that the 2000s would rather forget. The Pontiac Aztec was supposed to be GM's bold leap into the future, a crossover SUV designed to blend utility with edgy styling. It promised versatility for outdoor enthusiasts with features like removable rear seats, integrated storage compartments, and even a custom tent package. But instead of turning heads, it raised eyebrows. Its awkward, angular design earned brutal nicknames, including the Angry Kitchen Appliance, a phrase coined by GM's own vice chairman Bob Lutz. Despite a clear vision, the execution was off. Public reception was overwhelmingly negative, and media outlets mocked it relentlessly. Car and Driver ranked it among the worst cars of the past 30 years, and sales never took off, with just 112,000 units sold over 5 years. GM had high hopes, but the Aztec's commercial failure was so significant that it's often cited as a key contributor to Pontiac's eventual downfall. Though it gained some cult status years later thanks to being featured as Walter White's car in the hit TV show Breaking Bad, the Aztec's legacy remains a cautionary tale of style over substance and a poor understanding of market demand. The Hummer H2 arrived with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. A civilian spin-off of the military Humvee, it promised unmatched ruggedness, off-road capability, and an imposing road presence. Priced around $50,000, it was marketed as a premium SUV that made a statement. And it did, but it was just not the kind GM hoped for. The H2 was a gas guzzler of epic proportions, averaging a dismal 10 to 12 miles per gallon. At a time when gas prices were climbing and environmental awareness was growing, it became a symbol of irresponsible excess. Critics blasted its size, inefficiency, and impracticality, and it drew public backlash as a tone-deaf product in a shifting cultural landscape. Top Gear even called it a PR catastrophe. While it had a loyal niche following, the mainstream quickly turned away. GM faced mounting financial troubles as consumer preferences moved towards smaller, more efficient cars. The H2 was discontinued in 2009, the same year GM filed for bankruptcy. The Hummer nameplate disappeared with it, only to be revived years later in electric form. The Saturn Ion was GM's attempt to capture the hearts of younger, budget-conscious buyers. It launched in 2003 with a base price of around $14,000. It positioned itself as an affordable, efficient compact with a few quirky twists, like a center-mounted instrument cluster meant to feel modern and innovative. But the novelty quickly wore thin. Critics tore into its poor build quality, cheap interior, and strange ergonomics. Worse still, the Ion became one of GM's biggest safety liabilities. It was at the center of a massive ignition switch recall, linked to at least 13 confirmed deaths and over 100 crashes. RepairPal ranked it poorly for reliability, and its long list of problems made it a nightmare for owners. Sales remained weak, and the car failed to establish any real identity in the crowded compact market. GM discontinued the Ion in 2007, and just a few years later, the entire Saturn brand was phased out in 2010. The Ion story started with design failure and culminated with dangerous engineering shortcuts that cost lives and trust. The Chevrolet SSR was GM's gamble on nostalgia. It was a retro-styled pickup truck with a convertible hardtop and the soul of a muscle car. It launched in 2003, blending design cues from 1940s Chevy pickups with a modern frame based on the Trailblazer. Under the hood, it featured a 5.3-liter V8, and later models upgraded to a 6.0-liter V8, pushing 400 horsepower. But all that flair came with a hefty price tag, starting at around $42,000 and very little practicality. For a car styled like a truck, it offered minimal utility. Performance was underwhelming too. Early models took over 8 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour, and the drive didn't match its aggressive look. Reviews were mixed at best, and consumers weren't sure what to make of it. It was too flashy for the pickup crowd and cumbersome for sports car fans. With production costs high and demand low, the SSR ended its run in 2006 after selling just over 40,000 units. It remains a prime example of when design gimmicks overshadow functional appeal. By the mid-2000s, GM desperately tried to revive its aging minivan lineup. The result was the third-generation U-body minivans, which included the Chevrolet Uplander, Pontiac Montana SV6, Saturn Relay, and Buick Terrazzo. Hoping to rebrand minivans as cool and modern, GM dubbed them crossover sports vans and added SUV-like styling. But underneath the cosmetic tweaks, these were still traditional minivans, and not particularly good ones. Priced starting around $25,000, they offered standard family-friendly features but were plagued by mechanical problems. Transmission failures, faulty power sliding doors, and constant electrical issues were frequent complaints. The 2005 Uplander alone drew 208 complaints on carcomplaints.com, making it the most problematic year. Despite GM's marketing push, consumers quickly saw through the facade. Sales were poor, repair costs were high, and the van struggled to compete against more reliable options from Toyota and Honda. By 2009, GM discontinued all North American production of the U-body minivans. Only the Buick GL8 lived on in China, where it was redesigned for a completely different market. Moving on, let's look at Chrysler and Dodge, which face significant launch challenges, often due to design and reliability issues. When Chrysler introduced the Crossfire, it was a sure bet on paper. Here was a sleek, European-inspired sports coupe built on the bones of the Mercedes-Benz SLK, but offered at a much lower price, starting just north of $35,000. It was meant to combine the prestige of German engineering with American flair. But what buyers got felt more like a hand-me-down than a bargain. The Crossfire used outdated Mercedes tech from the late 90s, and it showed. Critics panned its harsh ride, numb steering, and uninspired performance. The car's unique styling wasn't enough to overcome the outdated underpinnings. Sales dropped so dramatically that by 2005, Chrysler had a 230-day supply of unsold Crossfires sitting on lots. In a surprising and frankly embarrassing move, they were even listed for sale on Overstock.com. That's right, a premium sports coupe dumped on a deal site like Discount Furniture. The Crossfire was quietly discontinued in 2008, another casualty of Daimler Chrysler's chaotic partnership and misaligned vision. The Dodge Caliber was supposed to answer Chrysler's growing demand for compact crossovers. With a starting price of around $15,000, it promised a mix of practicality, fuel economy, and urban style. But when drivers got behind the wheel, excitement quickly turned to disappointment. Reviewers slammed it for its noisy engine, clunky handling, and most notably, its interior. Cheap plastics, hard surfaces, and poor fit and finish gave the Caliber an economy feel that didn't match its ambition. It looked like a hatchback trying to play SUV dress-up, and it didn't do either job well. Sales were modest, but never strong enough to make it a serious contender. Listed by My Car Makes Noise as one of the most notable flops of the decade, the Caliber couldn't compete with more refined rivals like the Honda Civic or Toyota Matrix. By 2012, Chrysler had seen enough. The Caliber was discontinued and replaced by the more traditional Dodge Dart, a car that would sadly follow a similar fate. If there was ever a car that tried too hard to be tough, it was the Dodge Nitro. Launched in 2007, the Nitro was a mid-size SUV with a boxy, aggressive design that screamed muscle truck, priced around $20,000 to start. It looked bold, but under the surface things fell apart quite quickly. Despite its rugged styling, it offered a cramped cabin, sluggish performance, and poor fuel economy numbers more in line with full-size SUVs, just 16 to 18 miles per gallon. Build quality was inconsistent, and reliability issues started stacking up almost immediately. Buyers found themselves spending too much time in service centers. The Nitro fell behind as competitors like the Honda SR-V and Toyota RAV4 offered better features and more refinement. Its unique styling couldn't save it from being outclassed on nearly every front. By 2012, Dodge quietly pulled the plug and shifted focus to the more family-friendly Dodge Journey. The Jeep Commander aimed to bring three-row seating and upscale appeal to a brand known for rugged adventure. It borrowed its underpinnings from the Mercedes-Benz R-Class, boasted a starting price of $35,000, and tried to look like a bigger, badder version of the Grand Cherokee. On paper, it was a logical next step for Jeep, but in reality, it was a misfire. Despite its boxy, militaristic look, the Commander lacked the off-road credibility die-hard Jeep fans expected. It also suffered from serious mechanical issues. The 2006 model alone raised over 2,000 complaints, with frequent reports of exhaust leaks, faulty four-wheel drive systems, and brittle door handles. Critics labeled it overpriced, underwhelming, and uninspiring to drive. Its resale value plummeted quickly, and by 2010, Jeep gave up on the Commander altogether. It left no direct successor, and few tears were shed when it disappeared from showrooms. When Jeep introduced the Compass in 2007, the company hoped to tap into the booming compact crossover market. With a low starting price of around $17,000, it was Jeep's pitch to budget-conscious buyers who wanted fuel economy without giving up the brand's adventurous image. But the first-generation Compass missed the mark badly. It lacked four-wheel drive in its base models, and even the upgraded versions couldn't match Jeep's reputation for capability. Build quality was a major issue. Cheap interiors, rough transmissions, and frequent mechanical problems frustrated the ownership experience. Transmission failures and safety concerns haunted the model's reputation, and owner satisfaction was tepid at best. While some appreciated its affordability, most saw it as a watered-down Jeep. Sales limped until 2016, when Jeep finally completely redesigned the Compass. The second-generation Compass would go on to right many of its predecessors' wrongs, but the first generation left behind a tarnished legacy that took years to repair. Across the pond, European automakers face challenges with niche cars that fail to resonate with buyers, often due to design and production issues. Imagine paying $30,000 for a luxury sedan, only to find out it shares its bones with the humble Ford Mondeo. That was the Jaguar X-Type. It was meant to be Jaguar's entry into the compact luxury segment, a gateway car to attract younger buyers and boost sales. But instead of breathing new life into the brand, the X-Type diluted Jaguar's image. Critics and customers alike slammed it for failing to deliver on its promises. Common complaints included seized engines, failing transmissions, and a laundry list of electrical gremlins. Its resale value tanked faster than its reputation, making it a nightmare for second-hand buyers. According to My Car Makes Noise, it stands out as one of the most embarrassing launches of the decade. Sales were sluggish, and by the time Ford decided to sell off Jaguar, the X-Type was already on life support. In 2009, it was finally put out of its misery, replaced by the much better received XF, which helped steer the brand back on course. Let's talk about one of the most bizarre experiments ever to roll off a European production line: the Renault Avantime. A minivan coupe hybrid, the Avantime tried to do something no other car dared: combine MPV practicality with the flair of a two-door Grand Tourer. It looked like it came from a sci-fi movie, had only 4 seats, and carried a starting price of around $40,000. It was, to put it mildly, confusing. While Renault hoped its bold styling and luxurious features would redefine family travel, customers didn't know what to make of it. Rear legroom was cramped, access was awkward, and the price tag was hard to swallow. Only 8,557 units were sold before Renault pulled the plug, and even that was cut short by the bankruptcy of Matra, the company building it. Today, the Avantime is a rare oddity, a car that tried to be everything and ended up being almost nothing. Production ended just 1 year after launch, and Renault quietly moved on. If the Avantime was Renault's moonshot, the Vel Satis was their attempt to storm the luxury sedan market. It had ambition for sure, a plush interior, hatchback practicality, and enough electric gadgets to fill a tech showroom. Starting at around $35,000, the Vel Satis wanted to go head-to-head with the likes of BMW and Audi. But its design, well, let's just say it didn't scream executive elegance. The tall, awkward proportions turned off conservative luxury buyers, and once again, Renault found itself unable to compete with more established names. Handling was subpar, performance was forgettable, and sales reflected the lack of appeal. Just 1,300 units were sold in the UK over its entire run. Top Gear ranked it among the worst automotive flops of the modern era, and it's hard to argue. In 2009, Renault finally pulled the Vel Satis from production and shifted its focus away from the full-size luxury segment. Its spiritual successor, the Renault Latitude, wouldn't arrive until 2010, and even that had trouble finding traction. Rover's last-ditch effort to remain relevant in the 2000s came from the City Rover, a compact, budget-friendly car rebadged from the Indian Tata Indica. Priced at £6,495, it was supposed to be an affordable city car that could take on rivals like the Ford Ka and Fiat Panda. But right from the start, things went sideways. From what it offered, the City Rover was shockingly underwhelming. The ride quality was rough, the interior felt cheap even by early 2000 standards, and it lacked basic features expected by European buyers. Parkers rated it just 2 out of 5 stars, and critics accused Rover of dressing up a budget car with a premium price tag. Sales were well below expectations, and MG Rover's financial health deteriorated rapidly. By 2005, the company had collapsed entirely. With it, the city Rover disappeared from the roads. Today, it's a stark reminder of how desperation and poor product planning can accelerate a brand's downfall. While generally successful, Asian automakers weren't without their own notable failures, often due to safety and market reception issues. Let's find out what those issues were and how they affected Asian cars. Some cars are just ugly. And then there's the SsangYong Rodius, a universally ridiculed car that the Daily Telegraph crowned the UK's ugliest car. Designed to carry up to 11 passengers, the Rodius was supposed to be the ultimate family MPV, offering unmatched space at an affordable price. But what buyers got was a design that looked like a luxury yacht crashing into a minivan, with awkward lines, oversized panels, and a rear end that made no visual sense. Underneath the unfortunate styling, things didn't improve much. Critics slammed it for cheap interior materials, lackluster performance, and severe safety concerns. Sales outside South Korea were abysmal, and the Rodius failed to meet safety standards in several international markets. While it somehow managed to stay in production in South Korea until 2013, globally it became a symbol of everything that could go wrong in automotive design. Despite its noble goal of practicality, the Rodius will forever be remembered as a cautionary tale in aesthetics and execution. When the LandWind X6 hit European shores in 2005, it looked like China was ready to enter the global SUV market with confidence. Priced at just $15,000, it promised a modern design, solid features, and unbeatable affordability. But beneath its BMW X5-inspired exterior lay a nightmare waiting to unfold. European consumer associations crash-tested the X6, and the results were catastrophic. The SUV earned a 0 score, the worst crash test result in 20 years. The entire front of the car crumpled like paper, offering virtually no protection to occupants. The test alone obliterated LandWind's credibility in Western markets. Add in accusations of design theft, serious reliability concerns, and an overall cheap build, and the X6 quickly went from hopeful export to international embarrassment. Domestically, sales peaked modestly at 9,682 units in 2006, but never gained meaningful traction. Legal issues and shattered trust led to the X6's short production run, marking it as one of the decade's most disastrous Chinese car launches. The Hyundai i10 wasn't a disaster in the traditional sense, but it's worth mentioning because it fell short of what it could have been. Launched in 2007 as Hyundai's answer to Europe's compact city car craze, the i10 aimed to combine fuel efficiency, affordability, and modern styling, starting at around $10,000. And on paper, it ticked most of the boxes. Sales were moderate, and some buyers appreciated its nimble handling and cute proportions. But the i10 struggled with inconsistency. Build quality varied across production years, and safety ratings weren't always reassuring, especially compared to rivals like the Volkswagen Up or Fiat Panda. Critics also noted that the car lacked refinement, and some versions felt stripped down even for a budget segment. While it was never outright hated, the first-generation i10 didn't quite live up to its full potential. Hyundai took note, and in 2014, it launched a redesigned second-generation model that corrected many of its shortcomings. The i10 story is one of evolution, proof that not every flawed car is doomed as long as you learn from the mistakes. Lastly, let's look at Lincoln, Ford's luxury brand, which made an attempt at innovation with a luxury pickup but failed. At first glance, the Lincoln Blackwood seemed like an innovative blend of rugged utility and high-end luxury. Built on the reliable Ford F-150 platform and priced at an eye-watering $54,000, it was Lincoln's bold attempt to redefine what a pickup truck could be. But while the idea of a luxury truck wasn't inherently flawed, the execution certainly was. The Blackwood featured a fully carpeted cargo bed, yes, carpeted, and a non-opening tonneau cover that essentially turned it into a giant, impractical truck. The stainless steel bed trim looked flashy but added no real function, and its rear-wheel drive layout limited off-road appeal. Buyers simply didn't get it, and they didn't want it. Sales were abysmal, and production ceased after just 1 year. Leftover inventory was so hard to move that Lincoln dealers were still trying to offload it 2 years later. The Blackwood remains a textbook example of style over substance, and a failed attempt to create a market that didn't exist. Whether it was the Pontiac Aztec's jarring design, the Hummer H2's tone-deaf extravagance, or the Lincoln Blackwood's impractical luxury, these cars all shared one fatal flaw. They missed the mark on what people actually wanted. Together, they offer valuable lessons in automotive history. Don't ignore the market trends, don't cut corners on quality, and above all, don't underestimate the consumer's judgment. Which of these cars do you think was the biggest flop of the 2000s? Did you drive any of these? What was your experience with them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe. That's all for today. We'll see you in the next one.